Okay, so I mean, what do I introduce you as? Because I only know you as Raven.
Yeah, that's the name I go with most of the time. My publishing name is my full birth name, Rebecca Joy Stark, but Raven's what I go with most of the time. So
Because
yeah.
when I went on the new app.
Yeah, how did you
That
find it?
right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think I saw it first on your social, something like that. I clicked on the app. I was like, this is fucking cool, And
Yeah.
so I go to your deck and it was really like a reasonable price. It wasn't it was an impulse purchase price. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it
yeah,
was
yeah.
easy. And of course, I've been playing with it ever since. It did take me a second or two because that's me.
Yeah.
My God,
Technical.
the information. Like, where the fuck did you get all that? That is like, so fans and fellow fuckers, what it is it's a deck and you can you can choose your reading. You can have a reading online and then press other things and they will bring up the explanation, but they also talk about the god, goddess, or whatever the card's representing. And I mean, it's like another language, the beautiful names it's poetic.
Yeah.
It's
It is
not
another
just like,
language.
right? It's not just like, oh, here's the world card. So that means you're going to get everything. No, it's not like that. And of course, the lovely Sharon decorated your deck, I was going to say, brought your visionary art to Vision. And I
Yes,
mean, the
yes.
pic, everything. It's like, because at first I couldn't pronounce the names. So all that money my parents spent on education at private schools. Oops. Anyway, so as I'm like opening the thing, I'm looking at the pictures, and that explained a lot to me as well about what it was. But I'm totally getting the physical deck because there's a link in it that you can easily get, because I want to play, I want to touch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, that the app is a really cool sort of intro for people. Like it gives them a bit of information. Well, it's got the whole guidebook in the app. So you're not actually missing anything by having it. The difference is the feel of the physical card, the act of shuffling. You can't do the spreads the same as you can with the physical card because it only gives you the option of 1 to 5 card pulls on the app. But it's a cool place to start, and it's $6.99. Like that's a cup of coffee
That's what I
nowadays.
mean.
It's
Here's
easy.
the stocking stuffer, bitches.
Yeah, exactly right.
Although, does the Norse religion, the Norse Pantheon, does it celebrate Christmas? Like, what does it do at the 25th of December?
Nothing in December in the Southern Hemisphere. Our Yule is around sort of June, July time. But Yule for them is huge. It's a huge celebration. It's the middle of winter and we're all trying to survive. So we're sacrificing everything we can to every god we can bloody think of to try and make sure we survive the winter period. If you think of Scandinavia, it's not just a chilly breeze, like they're frozen, they're trapped. It's pretty hectic. So Yule is a big thing. It's a big deal. So they do definitely have a strong Yule practice, and there's lots of rituals that can go with that. The law doesn't give us a lot of information about what's done, but we do know things like, sacrificing horses and gathering as community, coming together, and the same sort of stuff we do now, giving gifts, making oaths, spending time with family and friends. So very similar.
I mean, I know that it's like that whole Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere thing,
Yeah.
So how did it become your passion, your life, your love? Like, how did you get into this Norse pantheon?
That's a pretty interesting story. I
I
always
bet.
loved ancient history. Like my dad's a big ancient history nerd. So I grew up studying ancient history, talking about it, learning about it. And actually, when I was a kid, there was this crystals shop called Berkana Crystals, and Berkana is one of our runes. And every time we'd go there, I'd ask the lady, what's Berkana mean again? And I thought it was cool because it was a bee. And I'm like, that looks really amazing. But that got me sort of started and interested in runes. So the runes came first. I know for a lot of people, the Norse mythology side comes first, but for me, it was the runes that dropped in first. And that was sort of, because I was obsessed with crystals and playing with crystals. And then as a teenager doing tarot and doing crystal readings, I learned how to cast crystals and read them. So I was already good at throwing shit, and reading it. And that passion for that kind of just flourished with Berkana crystals and learning from her a little bit about what Berkana meant. And from there, it was really hard to get information. Back then, there wasn't internet. And so you had to kind of find books and there wasn't much around. And so it kind of dropped off for a while. And that's, you know, as my spiritual practice developed and I was tapping into the ancient Egyptian pantheon and the Greeks and the Romans and just touching into everything, going, I'm not sure if any of this really resonates. And then it was hearing a story about Freya that I thought, oh my gosh, that it sounds like something that feels right, you know, just as the words were coming in, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I just started looking into that. And then that's when I found some pretty old books on Norse mythology and kicked off the passion from there. So it was sort of teenage years, early 20s that I got really interested in it. And then the spirituality side kicked
Last
in.
week.
Love you. Been, you know,
Because what I
almost 30
find,
years now. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I find interesting in that pantheon is that if you look at, say, Roman and Greek, and even Egyptian, they're often compared. Like you'll say, Thoth, Hermes,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like they go through. But I have never felt that Norse pantheon were the same beings. You know, I've always thought that they were their own little fucking thing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
100%.
I
Yeah.
find the runes fascinating that was your entrance in, you know, like
Yeah.
now, I mean, when I say I wouldn't know, yeah, I liked the runes too. I could just never understand the names. Like it never cognized for me, but I liked the
Mm.
pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, Vikings came and, you know, Vikings Valhalla, that kind of like was more Freya. Vikings, the original, was more Odin. You know, I
Yeah.
haven't seen the Marvel series. Sorry, Mr. Hemsworth. But you know, like that kind of reintroduced or refired, if you will, the zeitgeist to hear, to know this Norse pantheon. And really, you're like the old guard here, keeping it
Mm.
alive and away. Because you've got
Yeah.
quite a community I see on the not Facebook, what is it? Instagram. I'm fucking hopeless on Facebook. I'm better on Insta.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
this community.
Yeah. And it has, in the last 10 years, it has become this like burgeoning force. And actually, that's the reason why we decided to work on the Norse goddess rune oracle, because I had a deep, deep passion and respect for the goddesses. And interesting that you mentioned that about, you know, the Egyptian and the Roman and the Greek, because I had some familiarity with Hecate and I had been working with her. And when I encountered Hell, it was at a very, very dark period of my life, and she scared the shit out of me. And I'm like, what is this force? And I thought it was Hecate, and then she told me a new one. Like, I am absolutely not that goddess. Like, you will respect her
Bitch.
on your own, but I am stepping in, and you are not working with her in my time. This is my time, and that was very powerful. I'm like, they are completely different. Like, and even that sort of freak energy of the mother, but very powerful and very stoic. Like, I'm not giving too much away. You've got to really work hard for it. And I'm like, that is not at all what I was used to. So it was sort of terrifying shift, but one that excited me because I needed it. I needed a big kick up the butt to get me moving. And that, you know, the Vikings TV series coming out and everybody getting super excited about Vikings, it was amazing because I could have conversations and people knew who I was talking about. The challenge was that the feminine wasn't represented the way that it is, the way that I'd felt it, and the way that I'd read it in a lot of the source material. So that's kind of where that started, in like the goddesses were screaming out, like, what about us? We're not all Lagathas. We're not all trying to kill everyone. Like, some of us are peace loving and nurturing and mothers, and, you know, some of us are, you know, divining the future. We're not all this weird deformed faced seer that people lick the hand of. You know, some of them are powerful women
Oh, that was
walking
so
around.
fucking vile.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's them that pushed it along. Like, you know, Vikings is out now. People are aware. People are excited. The same thing happened in the Renaissance. People got super excited about old Germanic history. So it's ebbed and flowed throughout time over the centuries. And I think this is our next awakening where they're really coming back into awareness. And it's good. It's powerful.
That's interesting about the mother, you know, the mother as not being like as being a warrior herself, you know, as not being this nurturing sort of, you know, unconditional lover, but more like, come
Yeah.
on, you're here for a reason, get your fucking shit together. I like that.
Yeah.
Don't want
Yeah.
to like this.
100%. Yeah. goddesses and the gods are very similar. Like with, Freya is often seen as the goddess of war because she takes the first fallen soldiers in battle, and she's this real warrior goddess, and she's got all these Valkyries that are doing work for her. But then at the
Oh,
same time, she's the
I love
goddess
those
of love.
Valkyrie.
Yeah, like she's the goddess of love and passion and desire and sex, and like that's not what you would associate with death necessarily. So she does both, and there's fluidity in between all of that as well. There's a sense of wanting material possessions with Brithingham and her beautiful golden talk that she gets in one of the source material that we see. She has to have sex with 4 dwarves, although some people say it's just spend a night with. They politically correct that aspect, but
Right.
I really love using the powers that you've got and the tools and gifts that you have to create change in the world and to manifest what you want and to get what you want.
So who else is a god? Because Freya's, when I say famous, I mean that's the first thought. What are
Yeah.
other goddesses that are, not so much equally represented, because she seems to be the biggest and the best, so to speak, biggest and boldest. So I'm not going to offend any of them. Because they kind of walk among us, don't they? Isn't that the difference in the Norse, is that they are here, they walk among us as not in the sky. See, that too, that says something, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And there's really interesting material. Snorri Sturluson, who was a Icelandic historian / politician, and he recorded a lot of really cool information, which is where we get a lot of our mythology from. But he writes in Heimskringla that Odin was a man from Asia who walked across, and invaded as he was going, and then found Scandinavia and kind of settled there. And through the migration period, we see archaeological evidence of that sort of journey from the east to the west. And the fact that they do walk among us, like it talks about the different death practices and turning from cremation to burial, we see that in archaeology. So there's lots of cool stuff written down that matches the human side of the gods. And like Thor is very popular. We know a lot about him. The way he's represented in Marvel, not overly accurate, apart from the aggression side.
But look at me, I'm going straight for the goddesses.
Yeah. But
forgot about him.
Frigg and Freya, there's a lot of contention in the community because the name etymologically sort of changes over time. So some believe that Frigg and Freya are the one being. Others, like me, believe that they're very, very separate and very different. That Freya is from a different tribe altogether, the Vanir Pantheon, rather than the Asgardians or the Aesir. And Frigg is that mother figure. And she's actually listed in the source material as the number 1 goddess. She's the number 1. She has 12 handmaidens, and then it tells you who the handmaidens are. So some of them are represented in the deck, not all of them. Some of them are happy to take a back seat for other people to drop in, which was really nice. But Frigg would be probably the number 1 goddess in terms of, being the all mother or the one that's overseeing that feminine.
Having the 12. The 12 has that Christian connotation, but for a female instead of the male. Likey.
Yeah, exactly. And Odin doesn't have 12 gods underneath him. There are a lot of gods sort of listed there, but they're their own separate beings, whereas Frigg's 12 are definitely her handmaidens. It says pretty clearly it's their role.
Wowza. So that whole thing with the runes, I mean, I got runes on my deck, I sort of, they came to me one day. It was like, I didn't understand what a rune really was at the time, how to make it a sigil, to bring it alive, it's not just a flat thing. And I had this kid here one day, he'd come from Sweden. He was fully
cool.
fucking, yeah, right. He was, they all looked like Vikings, let me tell you. It was like a fucking fest. And he'd come here and he was loaded for me with Anubis energy. That was his consciousness lineage. And he was a funny little fuck. Anyway, him and I were sitting there one day and we would, he'd come to study and we were sitting studying and he just fucking, this whole thing came over him, like the voice, the whole thing. It wasn't him. Just give me my runes, bitch, and I'll be on my way.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the actual fuck? Right? The whole voice changed, the whole thing. Right? And I went into where he was staying and everything was dead. All the flowers were dead. It was like the weirdest fucking thing. But what I mean is, runes then sort of got on my radar. What are these fucking runes? Oh, sorry, that was a light going off.
No,
What are
that's
these
right.
fucking runes? Right? And
Mm,
it was it was always in the back burner. And so I
yeah,
think when I started with Runes of Ra, it was like, it was a different way to use the energy.
yeah, yeah.
So that being said, were your entrance, and they're such a big part of this pantheon. And obviously,
Mm,
this kid coming from the Anubis thing, whether or not he took the runes because he was Scandinavian and that was how the being spoke, I don't know. I don't know if there were
mm,
hieroglyphs could be runes, cuneiform
yeah, yeah.
runes, you know.
Mm.
But tell me more about the runes and how you use them.
Oh, all the time,
Yeah.
every single day. I love that energy. Like what was coming to me while you were talking about this energy is like Heimdall is one of the gods in the Norse pantheon who is said in the material to be the father of all humankind, where he sort of comes
Wow.
down and sleeps with in
Look at
between a
fucking
slave
Bill.
mother and father. Yeah, births, slave children, and then goes on to the next one, which is like the farmers, the middle class, and sleeps in between the mum and dad, and then more children are born, and then he comes to the king and the queen and sleeps between them, and then births these children. And his name is Rig, and Rig is that powerful energy of like the king, and I'm going to be, have all the knowledge. So runes then became his deal, and he gave them to humankind. Odin is the one who perceived them first in the well of knowledge, like hanging upside down from Yggdrasil, the world tree, and sort of taking them up through that shamanic kind of trance, no food, no drink, hanging upside down, blood rush, hanging from a yew tree. So
Yeah, I
that,
do it every Sunday, yeah.
yeah, that altered plant medicine consciousness that we can access. So it's interesting. It was probably a bit of Rig energy too coming through. Like, just this human needs to know them. Just pass it on and let him go. Like that's what he needs from
Yeah,
you.
right, please.
Yeah, exactly. But I use predominantly the runes sort of come in two phases for me. I use them for divination, obviously. So using them for rune readings and teaching people. I love to teach people the runes. So I do offer like an introductory course where we look at the source material, look at the archaeology, we dig into what it means from an academic point of view, because that's my nerdy university background. Then we do the esoteric side. How do we use them for divination? What do they actually mean? We only really have information from rune poems, which there's a lot of misinformation held in those. So trying to find the deeper meaning, then I guide people in the advanced rune course through deep meditation. Connect to the energy, the Megan of this rune, the essence of it, let it speak to you. So that's a really powerful tool for divination. The other side of that is rune healing, where I use the runes in
Oh,
energy healing. There's a system that was developed by Rodney Cox called Rune Volger. He's a brilliant man who's come up with all of these, or was sort of guided by Odin and Freya to design this system. It's a bit like Reiki in terms of different symbols. So we have other symbols to sort of drop runes in and put them where we need to activate them, and then the rune symbols as well that we use in that process. So that's a very powerful system of using the runes
wow.
for another intended purpose, which was magic. They're here to give us magic and to give us power. So yeah, I do both. And it's, I live and breathe the runes. So I find that they're really good teachers
Yeah.
and help with so many aspects of life, but they're not soft. They're not your gentle kind
No,
of
no.
energy.
And I've never seen anyone wield them that doesn't have a set. You know what I mean? Like anyone who actually can use them,
Yeah,
they're very, I think the entryway is integrity. I think then
yes.
once that's established, it's like the runes will work through you, with you, etc. But that's the ticket. None of that.
Yeah, yeah,
No
yeah.
fucking way. I've
No,
seen on the
absolutely.
internet like, people paint the runes on their wrist.
Yep, yep,
Right? And
yep.
I'm confused. What's your take on the hand? Like, I was always taught giving, coming, and what receiving is left and giving is right. But I'm
Yeah,
left-handed, my dominant
yeah.
hand. So technically it should be the other way around, right? That
Oh,
I'm receiving with the right and giving out. I'm fucking so confused. So I wouldn't
yeah,
know where to put it. Put it here.
yeah. what I say to people is when you get up in the morning, what's the first hand that you go to reach for a glass of water with? If somebody goes to shake your hand, you always use your right hand because that's society. So don't use that as the guide. What's the hand that you grab something with when you're in that first waking period? If you grab your cup of water with your left hand, that's your receiving hand because that's what you're instantly
Okay,
reaching out for. You know, you're reaching for something. Then the
sure.
other hand is the one that you'd be giving with. So it depends, you know, for some people who are left-handed, they still reach with their right. So then their right hand would be their receiving hand. So it can
I
kind
think
of
I do that.
depend.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure. I'm going to try tomorrow morning. There you go. There's an exercise for you.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
I find that intriguing. You know, the old itchy left hand, and I don't know if I'm giving or receiving at the moment because I'm so indoctrinated in the left and the right. So
Yes,
if I
yeah,
were to, for instance, bring to me my purpose or
yeah.
wanted to working with my purpose, what rune would be associated with that? Or
Oh,
is it
so
more
many.
you design one for the like how does it work? Like I'm coming to you for a rune consultation
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
you know, it's general. I haven't got a specific, but you know, my life's a fucking mess or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I'm trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
think of a way to sort of say, you know, like how do like I come you do this online? Okay,
Yes,
so I
yeah, I
can,
do.
you know, up online and here's my context, whatever you
Yes,
want to
yeah.
say. So what happens there?
So from there, I would do a rune reading. So I would get my runes and cast them and see what's sort of coming up. If there's a purpose behind the questioning, like you said, you're wanting to find your purpose. So a rune like Kenaz is very powerful because it's the illuminator. It's the torch that's, you know, like the beacon to guide you forwards. If it's a spiritual purpose you're looking for, Ivar's would be the one because it's the yew tree. You know, it's grounded, connecting to the ground, but then it connects to spirit at the top. So it gives you that direction and that purpose, trying to find what it is that you're looking for. But the runes will always tell me what it is that somebody's wanting or needing. Some people will come with a mask too, like they'll sit in front of me and say, "Oh, just want to check in with the family and work," and then something huge will come up about shadow work and traumas, and then they're in tears and they're like, "Yeah, I didn't want to address that." And the runes have no fucks to give; they'll pull it apart. They don't care. They will make you hear what you need to hear. But then I'll say to people too, let it sit for a bit, integrate what's being said. If it's still challenging, then we can have another look and see what advice that we can get. But it's not always hard. Sometimes the runes are just fun and we'll just have a bit of a conversation about something nice that you need to hear about. Like, don't forget that you have got great blessings and great gifts and there is a lot of love around you. You might be stuck in a shitty place right now, but you'll get through it. So yeah, it's a bit, you know, like you would do with a tarot reading or any other form of reading. It's very similar in the process, but the messages are quite deep. We really dig into some stuff.
So what you have them carved on something like it because does the crystal it's on or does the rock it's on, does that make a difference or is it more the symbol?
No, no, it's absolutely the material. So we've got one source written by Roman Tacitus, who encountered Germanic tribes, you know, early on in time, 2,000 years ago or more. And he says that the Germanic tribe would inscribe symbols on bits of wood from a nut or fruit-bearing tree, cast them onto a white cloth. The shaman or the priest would look up to the sky, pick 3 runes, look at them, and then that would be the divination. So I create my runes on wood. I would burn them into wood from my parents'
Wow.
mandarin tree or a cherry tree or a pear tree, whatever I can source at the time. And I do have Riverstone runes, which are my very first set that I ever made. And I still use those today for other people to kind of get the feel because I don't let people touch my wooden runes because I put my blood onto them as part of activating the runes. So I don't let people touch those. But the idea then is the material, and when I teach people to make the runes, that's an important process. The wood has to accept the rune spirit. And when you're talking about crystal runes, if you've got a rune like Hagalaz, which is chaos, you know, it's a hailstorm, we need to break some shit up. We need to move forwards. We're in this chaos period, you know, like chaos magic. We're wanting to bring that hard energy in. If that's inscribed on a gentle, soft rose crystal, like a rose quartz, it's
Doesn't
like
work.
yeah, it's like putting a fairy at a metal concert. It's like chaos is too much, it's overstimulating, it's not going to work for them, it's not their preferred place to live. So I am, you know, mentoring a seeker at the moment who has a wealth of crystal knowledge, and she's just paired up the right crystal with the right rune, and she's making her own set with that. Kim, you met her at the tea party. She's from owns
Orator.
Supply Company.
Oh, the one sitting opposite me. And
Yeah.
she's always doing lives or on the Insta. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's her cool sort of thing where she's blending those
Was it a mother?
those runes with crystals.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool.
Tell me about this mentor thing. That's pretty exciting.
I love it. I'm a trained teacher. That's my background. So I've got my master's in education and I love to teach. But because I was working in disability, a lot of what you're doing is intuitive. You know, if you're working with students who are nonverbal, not able to move their bodies physically, a lot of what you're doing is that psychic stuff. You know, you're reading minds, you're intuitively guessing what they need. And that level of work, and I worked with a brilliant physiotherapist actually who was using an alternative physio method to activate muscles with heat and energy from herself. And I'm like, that's bordering on Reiki or Reiki. Like, this is cool. This is working. So I got to practice a lot of that psychic stuff in my work, but teaching has always been my passion. So when I teach it, most people start at the introductory rune level, and it's just a 10-week course. It's one-on-one. You get to sit at home in your PJs, drinking your cup of tea, whatever you like. And I just sort of guide you through the program. But it's a structured curriculum based on the research that I've done and the information was pulled from the brilliant giants whose shoulders that I stand on, and sort of guide people to create their own runes. Then we do some magic at the end, bind runes, spell jar stuff, spell work. The advanced course is 6 months. You live vicariously with every single rune. There's 24 runes. So the first week is a prep, you know, what tools do we need to take on this journey? The last one is recovery. How did you survive the 24 runes? But you live that rune every week.
I like this.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
That's the conscious committed goes to that one. Like the conscious curious can start with the intro, which is that's pretty juicy. 10 weeks, you know, you should be able to be really proficient at the end of that. But that 6-month one, I love it. Conscious committed. There's something for them. Bravo.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's deep, but it's fun. And I lead, because I lead them through that sort of meditation journey to meet the rune and to go through that process. It's quite confronting. Like, a lot of stuff comes up for people, particularly when we get to the end and we're talking about Othala, which is our rune of inheritance. Like, you've got to face the stuff that you were sent here with. What gifts or tools did you come into this incarnation with? What are you leaving behind? And what shit are we letting go of? Like, we're going to release some stuff. And so it can be quite emotional for people. And that's why I do it one-on-one, because it's a safe container where you can share your story. Like, if you're digging into Turasals and we're talking about past traumas and painful stuff, that needs to be done in that safe container. So I really honor that for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, make that a little.
And I find people are at different levels, even if they are conscious committed. They're still at different levels. And, you know, they can't help themselves but give advice. They can't help themselves but when someone's sharing, you know, I'm there for you. This is what I do, you know, and I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And it's like, that's great, you know, and know a lot of people join courses to find community, you know, but I respect the client. I respect that journey and I dig the one-on-one. I think that when you're being mentored at that level, it's not a group thing. Maybe you can have a get together at Yule, Dales.
Yeah. 100%.